Welcome to the Point. This is a year that books will be written about, movies will be made, and people will study for years. As we come to the end of it, a look back on some of what happened, where we go from here, and what new COVID relief packages may mean for the state when we talk with Governor Gretchen Whitmer. But first, 2 years ago, on December 20th, 2018, I talked with Governor-elect Whitmer as she was preparing for inauguration. I asked her a question about communications with her administration, particularly in the time of crisis. I was really thinking back to the Flint water crisis and how that situation was exacerbated because of a lack of information sharing. But her answer, while dealing with that part of the question as well, is particularly illuminating given the dramatic and quite unforeseen circumstances of this last year.
Well, to be honest, that's the thing that keeps me up at night. I immediately was invited after the election to the new governor's school put on by the National Governors Association, bipartisan, Republicans and Democrats alike. And, they were very clear, something bad is going to happen on your watch. The man who was just sworn in as governor of Alaska, he had a volcano literally days after his swearing in. That's why immediately I've been to the Fusion Center, the Emergency Operations Center, so that I understood if we have a blizzard on January 1st or 2nd, I know who's where and how we proceed. I think that's critical. But communication is fundamental to problem solving, to identifying, getting solutions quickly for people that are counting us to do our jobs. Have never been the type of person that creates an office that's insulated. I thrive on relationships and information sharing, and so that is something that is a priority for me in establishing the cabinet and communicating with the cabinet, and is going to be within each of their departments.
Earlier this week, I asked the governor about that comment and how the scenario has played out in her second year in office. Governor, thank you for doing this. We're going to talk about a lot of what has happened this year, what you anticipate going forward, some relief packages, but I want to start with something that happened almost exactly 2 years ago today, December 20th, 2018. You took time out from your transition into governor to talk to me, and we talked about a number of subjects. And one of the questions I asked you was I was really thinking about the Flint water crisis and how different agencies, different departments, people didn't communicate very well together. And you answered that part of the question, but you also related that you had been to the governor's orientation. You had talked to governors who had had big crises early on, including the governor of Alaska, who had a volcano just days after being elected. And you said this is what they told you, quote, "Something bad is going to happen on your watch." And you told me that's what keeps me up at night. You could have never imagined what it was going to be, even though you knew there was going to be something, but you had no idea it was going to be something like this, did you?
I had no idea. I mean, the advice was go tour your state emergency operations center, because you're going to need to know where it is, what happens there. And 3 weeks into the term, of course, we had incredible low temperatures and winds, and we lost power for a couple 100,000 people in our state. And so I was there 3 weeks in, but I never imagined what 2020 would bring.
As you look at this now, and I'm not trying to get you to make a prediction, I'm just trying to get a feel. I mean, everybody talks about this. We know we're not done. We know we still have a lot that we have to do. But when you talk to the experts, is there a feel that we are halfway home, 3/4 of the way? Is there any way of knowing?
Oh, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, actually, Rick. I regularly take counsel with Zeke Emanuel and Scott Gottlieb and Josh Sharfstein and Ashish Jha. These are the national experts that you see on the national news all the time. And, Dr. Caldoun and Dr. Sarah Lyon-Callow and University of Michigan School of Public Health, we've got phenomenal minds here, but we also seek out nationally known experts to ask questions and to understand. And every one of them acknowledged December and January are going to be the toughest months of COVID, simply because of how much spread there is nationally, exacerbated by the holidays and, of course, the flu season. This is going to be a tough time, and certainly we're seeing that play out. But every single one of them also said 2021 is going to be a year of great promise. And I really believe that every month is going to get better than the last. By the end of January, we'll have a new administration with health experts that have got a plan and a national strategy when it comes to COVID. By the end of February, we'll have more vaccines available. That will play out March and April, and hopefully by the end of the spring or early summer, a great number of people in our state will be vaccinated. We'll start to be able to get back to some normalcy, and I really think 2021 is going to be a good year.
It would be hard to overstate the role that our medical professionals and our hospital systems have played in this pandemic, but they're still going to be taxed going into this vaccination period because we're going to be asking hundreds of thousands of people to regularly be vaccinated, and most of these, or at least all of the vaccines we have right now, are going to take not one but 2 doses. Are you convinced that our hospitals, our healthcare facility, the system have enough PPEs, enough people, enough ability to get these vaccines out in a pretty, it won't be rapid, but in a relatively rapid period of time?
I have great confidence in our leadership in our hospital systems across the state. Tina Friesdecker over there on the west side has been a great advisor, whether it was on the Michigan Economic Recovery Council or it is the orders that we've had to execute in order to try to keep our COVID numbers down and from overwhelming our hospital systems. I know that we are all working to build out the administration of vaccines so that it is as smooth and efficient as possible. We're also working to engender the confidence of the public. These are vaccines that have incredible efficacy rates and have shown to be incredibly safe. But we've got to earn the confidence and trust of the public. But I have great confidence in our health systems to be able to address this, and we will continue to be great partners with them in that mutual goal, because the more people that get vaccinated as quickly as possible, the sooner we're going to be able to resume some normalcy in our lives. And I know we're all craving that.
You talked about some of the orders that people have had to help deal with as we move through this pandemic, and they have been different from March and April all the way through the summer and now as we get back into the fall. And while you have pointed out often that many, if not most people in the state are complying, there still is a lot of pushback on some of those orders. And part of that pushback is from businesses who may never recover. So it's a twofold question. One is, what do you say to those folks? I mean, you've made the case time and time again, and they've made the case, well, look, we can operate safely as some of the big stores that are open, particularly thinking about restaurants. And secondarily, what about the long-lasting impact of losing large percentages of certain businesses?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, there's no question that a lot of businesses are struggling, and it's not their fault. It's not my fault. COVID-19 is a novel virus, and it spreads through respiration. We've learned that over the last 10 months. Early on, we thought it was surfaces that you touch, and while we still tell people, wash your hands, we know that largely the greatest risk is through respiration. We now know that the simple act of wearing a mask remains the most powerful tool that we have at our fingertips to keep our COVID numbers down and keep one another safe. And yet, we know that people have gotten tired of this fight, that it is the holidays, people want to be together. All of these things are making our numbers of COVID unmanageable and a real threat to our hospital systems. And so we've had to take this action. Michigan's in a stronger position than most other states. That was true all summer, and then we got into the soup this fall, but we're on the right trajectory now. If we maintain this, if people do what they did at Thanksgiving and stay home and not congregate, do that for Christmas and New Year's, come January, we will be able to re-engage these sectors of the economy. We want to mitigate the pain that people are feeling, but we can't do that at the cost of lives. And so if everyone does their part, we can do both.
What do you say to those folks that come January just won't have a business to reopen? I mean, some of them have already gone past the point of no return.
Yeah, I know, and it's heartbreaking. I mean, I know that a lot of people have built their small businesses over the course of their lives, and they're hanging on by their teeth, or they may have already failed, and that's it breaks my heart, and it weighs so heavily on us. And yet, we also know that states that haven't taken this seriously have had the same kind of outcomes and loss of life. When consumers don't have confidence that they're going to be safe to go out and do the things that these businesses rely on, that doesn't help them either. And so getting our arms around the public health crisis is how we get our arms around the economic crisis, because they are absolutely related. and you can't address one. You can't just address the economic side and think that you're going to fix the problem.
Let's talk a little bit about relief. You and I have talked about this a lot over the past 8 months, and you have been pushing for Washington to come up with another relief package. You asked the legislature to do the same, and as we talk now, it is not finalized. By the time the bulk of this interview airs, I believe it will be. But both of those things have happened, perhaps not to the magnitude you would have liked, but both at Washington with a little less than $1 trillion, and here in Michigan, the legislature and you have come up with a couple of plans. Talk to me about those and how important you feel like those can be as we move in to 2021.
Well, unfortunately, because of this virus, we've had to pull back on some things. And we know that there are a lot of people who are unemployed in Michigan and across the country. You know, there are a lot of businesses that are struggling. And so we want to give them some relief to get through the next couple of months. And so I asked the legislature to do $100 million. They did that. I'm glad. I'm looking forward to signing that and getting that relief out to help people. I'm also glad that Congress has taken an important step forward, and that will help a lot of people in Michigan as well. It's not going to come anywhere near what the true need is in terms of our build out for vaccines, in terms of making sure that we educate our kids and all of the other ways that our budget has suffered because of COVID-19. But I'm grateful for that. And I also can tell you that I've had enough conversations with the incoming administration to know they recognize the need to do more. And so I'm hopeful that next year we'll bring additional support for state and local governments, because we've got the frontline jobs of keeping people safe, and we need some assistance to make sure that we're successful in that.
Do you think that what the federal government has done at this point will go some distance in helping with another of Michigan's big problems going forward, and that's going to be getting a budget put together, because there are going to be revenue shortfalls? That's my estimation. I assume there's no way around that. When you start to constrict the business environment, when you start to constrict the economy, that also throttles the economy for the state, right?
Yeah, so obviously the federal action is not done as we are taping this. I look forward to delving into the details as we are finalizing the writing of the budget that I'll introduce in February. And I'm hopeful that there are a lot of different ways that we can utilize those resources to meet the needs of people in Michigan and to be smart about it. Michigan's a leader. We really are. Other states are looking to us. We have done a better job than most at keeping people safe. We re-engaged our economy. We're one of the top 10 resurgences in the country all throughout the summer. And so I want to make sure that we are primed to do that again. And this budget will be an important part of that, prioritizing the things that will support and an economy that needs to grow and needs to get right back into action.
Let me ask you a little bit about that budget. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, because I really want to talk about two other quick subjects. But what is the relationship between you and the legislature? And let me just be clear, I've watched it when it looks like there are many things that you can accomplish. I look back at auto no fault, which I predicted would never happen. And then I look at the budget process that was kind of the wheels off the wagon kind of thing. I mean, and then even during the COVID response, I mean, it wasn't terribly cohesive, and I'm being generous. So what is the future for you in the legislature as it pertains to the budget and dealing with COVID?
Well, Rick, I'm always going to look to work with the legislature. If we could all find some common ground, I think the people of our state would be better served. I am never going to sacrifice the values that I ran on and the things that I know to be the right thing to do. And I'm not going to sacrifice the powers of the executive office, not for me, not for any future governors. We're never going to find common ground on those things. But I hope and believe that we can find common ground when it comes to things like closing the skills gap, fixing the roads. They're plaguing every single one of us. We're moving forward on the state roads because I could do that unilaterally. I'd love some help from the legislature to address local roads and bridges because they need to be fixed. I also recognize that we're going to have our hands full with meeting the needs of our kids. In a normal school year, there's a lot of learning loss between the last day of school and the first of the next year. COVID-19 is going to dwarf what we would normally see, and it's going to be more profound for kids in higher poverty situations. And so we're going to need to find common ground. Our economy demands it, our homeland security, future generations of Michiganders deserve that as well. And anyone who wants to work on those issues will find a great partner in me.
Governor, I want to get to the final question, but before I do, I've got to ask you, you said you wouldn't do anything that would diminish the powers of the executive branch for you or future governors. What about the position of the legislature that they feel like they've been diminished over the past 9 months?
You know, the legislature is a deliberative body that has an important role, and I recognize that. I've served in it. The governor is where the buck stops, and the chief executive officer is the one that makes decisions when we are in a crisis, the one who is nimble. That is how our government is designed. If a legislator wants to have that role, then they should run for governor. But as a member of the legislature, they are a deliberative body and an important part of our democracy and our system of government, and I'll always look to work with them. But I am the governor of Michigan, and I'm going to do everything I can to keep all the people of this state safe.
Final question, Governor, give me the roadmap for the next 30, 60, 90 days. I know you said January is going to be tough. Vaccines are coming. All of us want to get back to normal, but it doesn't happen all at once. What do you see in the first quarter for the state of Michigan?
Well, if we all do our part, we're going to see our numbers go down. We're going to be able to re-engage more sectors of our economy. We're going to vaccinate people and earn the support and confidence of the public in the efficacy and safety of this vaccine. And we are going to start to re-engage and get Michigan's economy firing on all cylinders. And I'm excited. I think 2021 is going to be a good year. And I think we can always remember the incredible loss that happened in 2020. We lost thousands of Michiganders. It's been a hard year, but there are a lot of reasons to feel good about 2021 if we all do our part.
The coming year, of course, will see a lot of governmental focus on COVID response, and the state will still have to grapple with a budget that may be far short of the resources to meet the desires of the administration and the legislature. And that means they'll have to agree on priorities for spending, and that's always a challenge in divided government. When we come back, one state agency that has had to shift gears because of the pandemic. That's next. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. The Michigan Economic Development Corporation is tasked with, according to their website, and I quote, advocating for business development, job awareness, and community development with the focus of building a strong and vibrant Michigan economy. That's the end of the quote. While not all in the legislature always agree with the MEDC's role, one thing is for sure, that role has changed in the last few months from being one of development to one of finding a lifeline for businesses hit hard by COVID-19 and restrictions imposed by the government on those businesses. CEO Mark A. Burton talked to us about that evolution. In this very unusual year, it has been an unusually busy time for you at the MEDC because businesses, small and large, particularly small businesses, have had so much need. Tell me what it's been like as you've tried to respond to some of the issues and pressures put on businesses in the state.
Yeah, so Rick, obviously 2020 year has been wild. When the crisis first hit, I think when the governor first issued her first executive order, we obviously understood that most of what we did was going to have to be redirected into relief efforts because at that point, nobody really knew much about the virus, but we just knew that it was going to take a lot to overcome. So from an operational standpoint, we wanted to be creative in terms of new programs that we could repurpose or launch to be able to provide the kind of relief that small businesses in the moment needed. And we've been doing that all year long. And just earlier this week, we had our 20th program, which was opened and closed in terms of relief. So we've tried to respond with agility and creatively and thoughtfully.
That has created, I'm sure, an amazing workflow. I mean, if you think about government in total, so many agencies have been so taxed. I mean, I think immediately of the unemployment insurance folks. I think of the Secretary of State's office. But from your standpoint, not only were you kind of the first stop for these businesses who needed help, but you were also kind of the clearinghouse for whatever the government was coming up with. I mean, that had to, in addition to your primary function too, which is, in the development of more business in the state, which I assume has been somewhat less active during this time. Is that fair to say?
I really think that quite a lot of good work has continued, but it's really been the crisis has really been a problem born more by small business. But yeah, when it comes to what we do as an agency, we market the state, we focus on job creation and growth, and then we work to build vibrant communities. And I think obviously when it comes to the work of creating jobs and retaining jobs, that we were willing to step up no matter what relief was possible, especially from the federal government through the state. But we were there at every moment, willing to put our relationships and partnerships across the state to work to see whatever we could do as quickly as we could.
Maybe never more important than it will be in the coming year, as we now know we have vaccines that will be available to the general public, we hope by maybe the second quarter. And as we start to physically recover and be safer from COVID-19, it'll also be a time for the economy to start to recover. And again, MEDC is going to play a role in that. What do you expect as we move into next year with the promise of getting a handle on COVID-19? How do we in the state of Michigan start to rebuild those vital businesses?
Yeah, so obviously I think step one is being able to provide additional relief to help small businesses survive this winter, right? And once we can survive the winter and get to that point of mass distribution of vaccines, then obviously we can shift more into recovery mode. So relief is still sort of the focus, primary focus, and it will be through the winter. When it comes to recovery, I think that recovery is never easy, is never quick. But we're looking to take advantage of what we can, especially with our manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, medical sectors, and some of our high tech businesses to really be able to drive a quicker recovery than we would have in crises or recessions of the past.
When you think about the moving forward, there's always, there's a two-track, at least from my perspective. You always look to find new businesses. It's always great to have people who want to locate here. And of course, you want to grow those existing businesses. Before all of this happened, one of the things that we were talking about in the state of Michigan and had been for a while was getting more focused on getting more skilled workers, because we at that time had jobs and really needed more workers for it. How quickly before we get back to the process of trying to improve our workforce and making sure people are ready for those jobs that we all anticipate and certainly hope will be coming back?
Yeah, so in terms of workforce and talented workforce, those are key issues. I know the governor has focused on those through her administration thus far. And we work with our partners at the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. The governor's been able to achieve both a Reconnect program as well as Future for Frontliners, which are both ways that allow people to gain access to be able to upskill to maybe those higher demand jobs. So that is a great start. But yeah, it's always going to be a focus, particularly in Michigan here, as we look to really attract those higher skilled, higher wage jobs.
Back with a final note next. To the point. Over the next 2 weeks, we will introduce you to new lawmakers representing you in Lansing in 2021. And speaking of next year, we want to wish you and yours a much brighter and better new year. See you then. To the point.